Hoops Heaven proudly brings to you Basketball Hustle, featuring your host, the writer, Chris Pike, and the scoring machine, Shawn Redhage. Now it's time for another episode of Hoops Heaven's Basketball Hustle.
Hello and welcome to the latest episode of Hoops Heaven's Basketball Hustle. Huge time in the NBA right now. The fight for the playoffs is really heating up. We've got less than 5 rounds to go in the regular season. We've got 2 teams locked in a battle now over top spot. There's only half a game between the top 2 teams, and then we've still got 6 more teams fighting out for those last 2 spots in the top 4. So plenty to talk about on this week's show. I'm your co-host Chris Pike, but the man you're all here to listen to, the scoring machine, the Perth Wildcats legend, the 4-time championship winner, 6-time club MVP, Shawn Redhage. Thanks for joining me once again.
Thanks, Pikey. It's been an exciting week and another exciting round here in NBL action. You're right. It's coming down to the last few weeks, and I think it's all going to be played out. These next few weeks are going to be huge and determine a lot of these teams' season.
Now, we're recording this show on Saturday morning this week for something a little bit different, so we'll get into the games on Friday night to tip off round 16 shortly, and some big wins, big results as well. New Zealand Breakers keeping their season alive, beating the Sydney Kings, and the Perth Wildcats handing the South East Melbourne Phoenix another thumping. But before we get to that, Shawn, it's been a big week for you. A Redhage basketball camp held at Bendat Basketball Centre, sold out with 200 kids there over the week, and I'm sure they all enjoyed the chance to get up close and personal with you and the crew that you put together. How did you go?
Yeah, it was fantastic. It was our biggest camp we've had. Moved over to the Bendat Basketball Centre, had 8 courts going. Just great to see so many kids out and playing basketball and enjoying it 4 hours a day. It was pretty hot on a couple of those occasions, but just to seeing kids enjoying basketball, getting better, interacting with new friends, it's a great environment, and I really enjoy working those camps and seeing just the improvement on some of them. Some of those kids have come to a few camps now, and to see them where they were a few years ago now is fun to see.
It's not easy for a professional athlete to find something that they're passionate about once they finish, especially someone like you who spent 15 years playing professionally after college. So, I mean, you had 20 years where you were basically a full-time basketball player. Do you feel like you've now found what you're passionate about post your professional career?
Yeah, I think, I've always had that passion for basketball and still love to play, but now you're kind of moving into a different realm, and you're seeing it from that early development. You know, we've got kids as young as 6 and 7, and even my son, I think he came to his first camp when he was 7 years old, and now he's 9. So you kind of get to see that development. I was coaching his little team this morning as well up at Warwick in the Sterling competition over the summer. So it's just fun to be at the grassroots of basketball and just to find something. It's hard to replicate finding that passion that you have when you're a professional sportsman. And I think that's one of the hard part of being an athlete is what do you do when you finish, and being able to stay busy, find that passion. And I think you kind of bring my two loves in basketball and in coaching as well. So I'm really enjoying it, and it's been fun to see the development of and getting basketball. I think basketball is really getting popular, especially at that junior level. I know the NBL is growing and exploding, and at the professional level, it's at a whole nother level. But I think basketball as well is really taking hold at the junior level, and they're seeing some explosion and interest within that as well.
I'm sure it beats sitting in an office all day, but there was a period where you were heading in that direction, and you even started working in the finance field, it must have been around sort of 2010, 2011. Are you much happier that you've been able to avoid that for now?
Yeah, no, it's something I enjoyed, and I guess that's the hard part. When you go to college, you're 18, you're not really sure what you want to do for the rest of your life, but you kind of made that decision. I got my degree in construction management, but I haven't really set foot on a construction side since probably getting my degree and having to go do some work experience. But other than that, I've just been basketball, and I do enjoy the financial planning side of things as well, and worked on getting my degree in that. But basketball finished for me obviously at the NBL level. I was still passionate, and always thought that I'd kind of go into that junior basketball development, and I'm really enjoying it.
Yeah, very good. It seems to be working well for you. Now let's move on. We're of course here thanks to Hoop 7. So head to hoop7.com.au for all of the basketball gear that you could ever dream of. If you're in Perth, of course, you can find them at Murray Street in the Perth city. So head in and check them out there. And thanks to being a listener here on Basketball Hustle, if you use the special code word HUSTLE, the team there will take care of you. So online, you can use that at the checkout, or if you're there in person, just mention it when you go up to buy your products, and the boys there will take care of you. So thanks to Hoop 7. Let's have a look at the start to round 16. So we're fresh here off 2 games on Friday, and they were two massive ones for all the 4 teams involved. And starting over in New Zealand, in New Plymouth, so the second time that the NBL had played down there, and really important win for the New Zealand Breakers. Keeps their season alive. That they improved to 10-12 with that win over the Sydney Kings. They did it without Sek Henry coming into the game, who's out again with his calf injury. RJ Hampton now is back on the sidelines with his hip injury, and then two technical unsportsmanlike fouls to Brandon Ashley in the third quarter, which was pretty rough on him. I thought saw them without another key player as well, but they still found a way to win. Rob Lowe stepped up again, came up huge. Jared Weeks was the same, and Scotty Hobson terrific as well with 30 points. Not sure how much of the game you saw, Sean, but how big a result is that for the Breakers?
It's a huge result, and probably even a bigger result for the Sydney Kings. I mean, surprising that they would, with the New Zealand Breakers, you're right, you're going through the list of guys that they don't have, and to get a win versus Sydney Kings team, let's be honest, at the start of the year, they almost looked unbeatable. The way they were playing 12-1, but they've really come back to the rest of the pack now, and it looked like they were saving Andrew Bogut for later in the year, and we talked about that earlier in the year. I thought that's probably a good move. I thought they would have done that just with his, I guess, Boomer's commitments and everything, but they got 3 points from their bench, the New Zealand Breakers, and beat the top side. So credit to the guys that got the job done. I think they had 4 guys play 34 minutes or more. And Scotty Hobson looks like he's Corey Homicide Williams, should I say, did say he was the best player in the league in the preseason. And, he's getting the job done at the moment. They're relying on him, and he's providing some fantastic production. So that's a great win for the New Zealand Breakers. And the Sydney Kings, they're probably hurting from that loss, knowing that they had a great opportunity to kind of build some movement between them and the Wildcats, but they weren't able to.
Yeah, and as the night wound on, it became even more important because suddenly, with that loss, the Kings are 15-7, and the Wildcats are 15-8, and as we know, the Wildcats have got a terrific run home. So I think it might end up being one of those losses that ends up costing the Kings top spot. Would you? I mean, I still think it was probably a good move to rest Bogut, especially with the extra travel. It wasn't just heading to Auckland; they had to head to New Plymouth as well, and they do have a game on Sunday against the Phoenix as well, which I assume he's playing for. But yeah, I mean, if it ends up costing you a top spot and home court advantage in a grand final series, how much do you end up living to regret this game?
Yeah, it's a tough one, and I'm sure they weighed up a lot of that. I think the travel would have had a lot to do with that, not just Auckland, but then having to go to New Plymouth. And, probably not the biggest planes to get you from Auckland or the bus as well. So it's, only time's going to tell. I mean, we'll see how Bogut hasn't looked as fresh as he was last year. I don't think he's been as dominant, especially on the offensive end. He's been passive at times. We know he's a great passer, but I still think in this league and his height and his athleticism and ability, they should utilize him down on the block a little bit more. I think he would demand a lot of attention, but we haven't seen that as much. He's not blocking as many shots. So I think it's probably a good idea. You want to get him to 100%, but you also want to get that top spot. You're in a great spot to get it. So it's a tough one. They do have a favorable schedule coming up after this as well. They've got a few home games, and outside of having to travel over to Perth, I think they've got winnable games. I think they play Melbourne United is kind of their other tougher one to finish off. They got South East Melbourne Phoenix twice. So it'll, I think to me that game against Perth could be the decider on who gets top spot.
Absolutely. Jayshawn Tate, he was having a terrific game, 22 points, three rebounds, but he fouled out with 8 minutes or just under 8 minutes to go in the game. Do you take the risk and do you play him on the 4 fouls at that point in the game, or because he was having such an impact? Was it potentially a mistake by Will Weaver to even have him on the floor with that long left in the game?
Well, I'm always of the opinion that it's really an individual thing, and you got to know the guys that you're coaching. Are they susceptible to getting that fifth foul? Are they able to kind of get their hands out? And how physical do they play defense? We know Shawn Tate is a physical defender. He's a bull down there. So to me, he's kind of one of those guys. If he picks up that fourth, you kind of need to protect him. And it showed, the game was tied with 2 minutes to go. And then the New Zealand Breakers hit some big shots. So they really missed him down, that playmaking ability and rebounding and defensive toughness. So, that might be one that did cost them by picking up that fifth foul, because he's really important to that team. And he's kind of that glue guy, I think, almost if you think of the Golden State Warriors from previous years, that Draymond Green that just does a little bit of everything but gives them that toughness.
Yeah, terrific comparison. I couldn't agree more. Let's move on to the second game last night. RAC Arena, Perth Wildcats hosting the South East Melbourne Phoenix. We saw what happened the first time the Phoenix came to Perth. They lost by 31 points. I think we're all expecting them to be more competitive this time around, and they were for a half. I know the Wildcats were still 11 points up at half time, but the game sort of felt up for grabs still at half time. But once Trevor Gleeson called a timeout early in that third quarter after the Phoenix made a brief, I think an 8-0 run, it was all the Wildcats from there, and they just got on a hell of a roll and they couldn't be stopped. They ended up winning 97-71. So for the Phoenix to lose on their two trips to Perth by a combined 57 points means they won't have too many fond memories of those experiences. But important win for the Wildcats, and an impressive one as well. First game at home in almost a month, and to put that sort of second half performance together, I think will give them a lot of confidence, especially when they've now got 8 days to build on it before they have to play again.
Yeah, well, if they shoot the ball like they did against Illawarra and then against South East Melbourne Phoenix on Friday, I don't think there's going to be anyone that can really compete with them the way they play defense as well. I mean, I really liked, you look at Miles Plumlee's stats and nothing outstanding. But the thing I just noticed is how hard he plays. I mean, he's out there. He's 6'11". He's hedging. He's sprinting the floor to get back. He's hands active on defense. To me, that's exactly what the Wildcats need. They don't need someone coming in and scoring 15, 20 points. They've got Bryce Cotton, they got Trico White, and they got Nick Kay, who can kind of pick up those points. And then they've got Clint Steindl, who comes in and shoots the ball as well as I've ever seen him shoot in this league the last few weeks. So it's I think it's an ominous sign for the rest of the league, the way they played defense last night. I mean, was it 11 points for Southeast Melbourne Phoenix in that first quarter? It just looked like you were just wondering, where are they going to get the points from? I mean, Mitch Creek started 0-4 and he banked in his first shot, and it almost looked like everyone was surprised that Southeast Melbourne Phoenix scored. So it's the other thing is they've lost twice now. You're right, by over 50 points total. That really hurts your percentage. It almost kind of takes you out. You've got to finish a game ahead of everyone now because you got such a poor performance. Poor percentage, I say, over the years. So it's a tough loss for Southeast Melbourne Phoenix. It's a learning experience. You got to still remember this is their first year in the league, so they got off to a hot start. But it probably shows you the levels between the top two teams and the rest of the league with that result last night. Yeah,
I think so. I want to get your thoughts on the first half. It was probably the ugliest first half of basketball I've seen this NBL season, and I know the two teams weren't playing great, but the officiating didn't help either. For the first half alone, we had 22 fouls called and a combined 29 foul shots between the two teams. A lot of those came in that second quarter, which just dragged on forever, just with the amount of calls that the referees were making. To have more than a foul a minute, to have almost 1.5 foul shots for every minute that we play a game. I don't think anyone wants to see that, do they? What were your thoughts on that first half?
Yeah, I agree, and actually, the Wildcats games usually go by pretty quick because there's not a lot of fouls called, especially at home at RAC Arena. I know when I'm working the game, it goes by pretty quick. But I was watching the game on television last night, and the amount of fouls that were called, and some of them were ticky-tack, but you're going to have different refs every game. The players got to adjust a little bit. Miles Plumlee's he's an import in this league, and as soon as you come in, you're just going to get tagged, especially with how physical that block he had later in was just outstanding, and he got called for the foul there early in the third quarter. But that just shows you his presence. But you're right, you got to find that happy medium. And no one wants to see that many fouls called. So it's hopefully there'll be improvement there. But yeah, it wasn't pretty basketball, especially in that first half.
Well, I mean, you touch on the players having to adjust. Once they realise how the game's called, is it on the players? Is it on their necks to find a way to avoid people picking up those cheap fouls, or do like Simon Mitchell said after the game, do they just have to stop calling the soft fouls that have no impact on the play? I mean, is it just a balance of both in the end?
Yeah, I think there's a little bit of both. I mean, I saw the foul where you're just grabbing someone as you're trying to get around that screen, and there was really not a whole lot in it. And then South East Melbourne Phoenix actually got the and one. It was on Madgen's jumper, I think. But to me, that was just kind of a no call. Like, guys are competing. There's going to be a little bit of physicality. Obviously, you don't want holding and grabbing and that type of thing. But, it's on both. And, from the ref's point of view, this is how we've been instructed to call this. And so they want to set the tone in that first half as well. So it's a tough one, but you've got to adjust. The refs aren't going to change, especially mid game. They're just going to call. They've been instructed, hey, we want to be consistent throughout the game. So if you're doing this, you've got to adjust. And I think it's on the players. I think they probably did do some adjustment at halftime. There weren't as many fouls called, a little bit more.
The second half was much better, yeah.
But I think that's probably the refs doing not a bad job, because the game freed up after that, because people weren't holding and doing that, because both teams were playing pretty desperate. I mean, the Wildcats knew. I don't know if a lot of the players knew the result going into that one, but it had finished half hour to an hour before their game, so they would have. I'm sure they probably would have been aware that the Kings lost, and obviously Damian Martin, who didn't play, he knew it at halftime. So I'm sure quite a few of the guys would have known how much was riding on that, because top spot, Wildcats get top spot. That's a grand final berth and a great shot at winning a championship. They know how much that's on the line.
Absolutely. Speaking of Damian Martin, he's sidelined at the moment, and he's sidelined for at least the next 2 weeks as well. Mitch Norton is really stepping up in his absence. He played great defense the last night again on John Roberson, who had a pretty quiet night, just shot 3 of 9 and only had 11 points. But Mitch is also stepping up offensively. He had that hot start where he hit, I think it was 3 or 4 threes in the first quarter against Illawarra. He had another good offensive night last night, put up 18 points. He's really taking his chance in the absence of Damo.
Yeah, and I think he's reading the defense pretty well. I think when teams go under that on ball, he knocked that shot down against Illawarra. But I also like when they pass him the ball, and obviously teams are gearing up to stop Bryce Cotton. So they're almost using Mitch Norton's man to stop Bryce Cotton. So Mitch Norton's grabbing that ball, and he's just putting his head down and getting to the rim and putting some pressure. And when he uses that speed, he gets so low. I don't think there's another player in the league that gets as low. He almost just attacks your hips, gets you around, and either gets fouled or he's on the rim laying it up. So
he can also finish pretty well from those positions, Yeah,
he is, and it's probably. I mean, there's going to be a time. I don't know if it's going to be this year, next year, when it will be, but he'll be the starting point guard for the Perth Wildcats. So it'll be this is a good transition and opportunity for him to really cement his spot in that lineup as well when Damo does decide to hang him up. So we don't know when that'll be, but Mitch Norton is playing some pretty good basketball, and it's really good to see. He had a little bit quiet start to the year, I thought, and wasn't shooting the ball that well. But when he knocking down that 3, it just opens up the whole game for us and for him. And he's improved over that, and he's got a nice, decent looking stroke that he can be consistent when he's open.
Majuk as well. To me, I just thought he and Dario Hunt were two similar players, but potentially it was never going to work for them as a combination. But now that he's getting a chance, and especially last night because of the foul trouble that Plumlee was in, he was able to really have an impact, especially the offensive rebounds that he grabbed and the second chance points that he gave the team were just massive. And I think he's probably been buoyed by the fact that Dario's not there now, and he knows that he's got a real chance to make a stamp on this team.
Yeah, we saw a few weeks ago Trevor kind of inserting him into the starting lineup.
Yep.
And I'm not sure if that was to get Dario Hunt, more get him going a little bit more. Sometimes you put an import to the bench and kind of get them, get their attention. But he's played pretty well when he's in there, and probably stats wise, you might say, oh look, he's playing better than Miles Plumlee at this point. I think Miles is going to get better as the longer he is with the Wildcats, and he learns how to play off Tarico and Bryce Cotton as well. But yeah, I like what he's bringing so far the last few weeks, especially rebounding. To me, that's the thing. And Trevor Gleason's big on that. I think that's why they went out and got him. They know how good he can be, especially on the offensive end. So
yep.
If he can grab those offensive rebounds, get those extra possessions, and kick it out to the shooters, he's going to get quite a few minutes from Trevor Gleason. I know that.
Just on Plumlee, to me, that was the block of the season. The one on Dane Pino last night, even though it was called a foul, it looked to be the cleanest block you will ever see. So I don't know what the referees were seeing. So that was disappointing. But for an import big like that, how frustrating is it to come in and realise that some of these fouls you're getting, you've probably never seen it in your life before?
Well, it's a different physical. I mean, he's coming from an NBA game where he's going up against 7-footers on a nightly basis. So he's kind of got to be over physical to be able to compete with those guys. Whereas here, he's not going up against as big a guy. So he's kind of got to learn, and he's a big, strong guy as well. So he's got to find that happy medium where he can play hard, but also not pick up those silly fouls in it. And a guy like that, I always, if we had a new guy that come in, might have been in foul trouble, I said, you got to get through that first quarter with getting no fouls, and then you can play the rest of the game with that aggressiveness that we know you're capable of. So he's kind of got to, we saw that wrap around cheap foul, which actually, looked like a lot of ball, but over here that's going to get called probably 80 to 90% of the time. So he's just got to protect himself, especially that first quarter, and then he can come out and play a little bit physical the rest of the game. So I'm sure the coaches will be talking to him with that, and he'll be learning, and good experience. But I expect him. We're probably not going to see the best of him until maybe the last game or two, and then come finals time. I think he'll be huge for the Wildcats.
Based on what we saw from him at the foul line, we might see some hacker miles at some point throughout the finals.
Yeah, it's a guy who's getting paid $12.5 million and going 0 for 4 from the free throw line. It's not pretty, and they didn't look like they were. Any of them had a chance to go in. So I'm sure he'll be getting some extra shooting practice in this week. But that might be a strategy for teams. I mean, hack a miles. We'll end up seeing what Trevor Gleason does if that becomes a situation. But if teams are going to be down 10, 12 points, I can see that coming into play for sure.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. I noticed when the Kings played in Perth last time, Andrew Bogut actually asked Will Weaver if he wanted to play hacker Dario Hunt. So it's something that opposition teams have thought about. So it'll be interesting if we see it happen at some point. I guess the thing you have to be cautious of now is getting unsportsmanlike fouls, and then it sort of changes the game completely and it turns things on its head. But yeah, we'll see. Now let's talk about Bryce Cotton. His 100th game in the NBL. Both of us have probably seen all 100 of those games. You probably played alongside him for the first 40 or 50 of them, and you've watched on since, and certainly every game in Perth we would have both seen him play and then watched the rest on TV. It's been a hell of a first 100 games for him, probably the best 100 games ever by a Perth Wildcats player, and he produced again last night, 25 points, 7 assists. He had his mum in town for the first ever time. He had his wife there, he had his daughter there, and he put on a show. It's a hell of a story that Bryce Cotton's putting together.
Yeah, let's make no mistake. He is an outstanding player, and I'm not sure. I wasn't there for Ricky Grace's first 100 games, but I imagine it would be hard to beat what he's been able to produce since he's come into the league. So, and it was interesting listening to that interview with his mom at halftime with Lockie Reed, and she was saying that Bryce calls this home now for him, which if you're a Wildcat fan, you are excited to hear that. We know there's talk of him potentially playing with the Boomers, wants his citizenship. Let's hope that does go through, because I think he'd be a good asset to the Boomers. Definitely not a lock to make the team, but I think he would be a great asset if they were able to get him in there. Just the way he passes the ball and shoots and can flat out score and competes. That to me, the most impressive play last night was when he got blocked and he sprinted to the other end of the floor, got back into that defensive play, knocked the ball out of bounds, almost ran up into the stands, I think, up into row 212 or whatever it is over there in the corner. And to me, if you're a coach, you're just like, that's my best player. That's the best player in the league, and he is sprinting back to get back. Like, that's the ultimate example. That's something Damian Martin would do. Yep. And Bryce Cotton is doing it. So you're in good hands when you got your best player also playing the hardest.
Do you stand by your statement that he's the best player that you ever played with?
Look, I think from a more talented point of view, I think James Ennis. Probably if you're looking at just pure athleticism and talent, I know Bryce Cotton can get up and jump. But if you look at an overall basketball player and the skill level he has, I don't think there's anyone that I've played with better than Bryce Cotton. I mean, to be able to rise, people don't understand how difficult it is to be consistent with a jump shot, with how high he jumps. Yeah. And he just makes that like it's like the easiest shot in the world. So I actually thought in the first half he was probably a bit emotional. I know, when my mom first came out to Australia, and she actually came out for saw my first Perth Wildcat game when it was number 300. So, it's a pretty emotional time, and it looked like Bryce was a little bit emotional in that first half and maybe pushing things a little bit, which is un-Bryce-like. But once he settled down, he really found his groove. And, he didn't even really have to play in the fourth quarter. They played him for a few minutes, but, 25 and probably 3/4 time. So it was another probably just average Bryce Cotton performance, but, an outstanding performance from anyone else.
For sure. Now, last week on the show, you said that provided the Wildcats got that win in Wollongong, that you would expect them to go on to finish in top spot, given the run home that they've got. Now that they've won those two games, they're 15-8. Like I said, half a game behind the Kings, and they do have a home game in hand against the Kings. Do you expect the Wildcats to go on to finish in first place from here?
I do, and I think it'll come down to that Wildcats versus Kings game in a few weeks' time. I think the beginning of February is the one, and I'm sure the Kings have that one circled because that one's worth double. So if you win that, you get a loss on the other team and give yourself a plus percentage. They're getting Wildcats with that big win. They're getting closer to the Sydney Kings percentage as well. So it'll be interesting the last few weeks, but I do think, having 4 of their last 5 at home now is a huge advantage. That one game away at Melbourne, that one's going to be tough. But I think if they can get the home games, I think they'll get top spot.
Let's just touch on the Phoenix quickly. It was tough to pull too many positives out of it from their point of view. Devondrick Walker looks like a very, very talented player and a good shooter, but someone that can also create his own shot. So he's a handy pickup for them late in the piece. But did you see too many positives out of it from a Phoenix point of view?
No, they did talk about on the broadcast last night, Mitch Creek kind of carrying an injury. He didn't look very explosive.
No.
Roberson, I thought he was a little bit more aggressive than we usually see him in the first quarter. He was actually getting to the rim a lot more. Ty Wesley, we just haven't seen the Ty Wesley from the last 2 years yet.
No.
He had that one good game, South East Melbourne Phoenix, but he's just looking rusty, not having that usual touch around the rim that he normally has.
He's shooting very poorly. It wasn't just last night. Overall, he's been shooting poorly, and again last night, 2 of 11. That's very un-Ty Wesley-like.
Yeah, they really need their stars to kind of produce, and obviously Mitch Creek had a quiet one as well. I guess if there's any positive, it is Devondrick Walker shooting pretty good and looking pretty smooth out there. He was actually he was actually here on Wednesday. He was here before the South East Melbourne Phoenix. He was shooting around at Bendat Basketball Center on Wednesday night with one of the South East Melbourne Phoenix coaches and Tommy Greer as well, the GM there. So he was actually here waiting for Southeast Melbourne Phoenix. I thought, Simon Mitchell said, look, he was our best player and scored the most, which probably isn't a good thing. The fact that he only met his teammates less than 24 hours before. So it's is it too little, too late? Possibly. I can't see them getting into the finals here. But for me, they can find out if Devondrick Walker is going to be a key guy going forward for them. I mean, if you've got Roberson, Walker, Creek, and you can get Ty Wesley 100% and healthy, getting back to that level, that's a good core right there. And obviously Dane Pinto and what he's been able to produce this year, I think they got the makings. They just kind of got to find that ride. Defensively is where they've got to improve. So I'm not sure Devondrick Walker is how outstanding at defense he's going to be, but they need some other guys that can be able to bring that toughness defensively.
In a game like that, how much do you miss Adam Gibson not being able to come on the court due to his calf injury? I know that you probably don't need him to score a lot. You just need his presence out there and his leadership. How much do you miss? It's similar to the Wildcats with Damian Martin. How much do you miss that leadership out on the court?
Oh, I think for a guy like that, that's where can really settle in those runs that teams go on. I mean, we saw South East Melbourne Phoenix, they went on that run early in that third quarter, got it back, and then after that, the Wildcats called timeout, and it was lights out after that. Just be able to stem those tides when those teams go on a run, and you're not coming down. We saw Devondrick shoot some quick shots, which probably leads to the Wildcats and extending that lead if they don't make it on the other end. So, I think you do miss some leadership, and he knows how to hit big shots as well. I mean, he can come in, he's not a flat out score, but I think he can provide. We've seen him, score over 30 this year. So he can score. And to me, he just brings, they're missing some little bit of defensive toughness. And that's what Gibbo, has kind of prided himself on his whole career.
Yeah, for sure. Now, that's the start to round 16 taken care of. We'll take a look at the other four matches shortly. Just a couple of other things I wanted to get your thoughts on, Shawn. LaMelo Ball, we've now officially seen the last of him in the NBL. He won't be coming back to play for the Illawarra Hawks again, whether or not it's a genuine foot injury or if it's just precaution to make sure that he's healthy to start his NBA career. I don't think it really matters either way. He's done his job here and he's impressed enough where he's in that discussion for the number one draft pick, and I don't think we can fault him for anything he's done. But do you see it as a success overall for the league and for LaMelo, the way it's all panned out?
Look, I think everyone would have liked to see him continue. From a just basketball purist point of view, you want to see as much as you can of a guy who could be the potential number one pick. I understand it from a business and professional point of view why he's chosen to hang it up the rest of this season. I think it's probably a smart move and something you're going to look back on. He's proven himself. I don't think he can help himself anymore. By playing these last 4 or 5 games. If Illawarra Hawks were in the hunt, maybe it might have been a different story. But I don't think he's going to help himself. But, I do look at it as a success. The amount of exposure that the league has got over in the USA because of this has been astronomical and something that we've never seen here in the NBL. And I'm not sure we're going to really realize it until a few years down the track. And the amount of people that take notice and the doors that are now open. I mean, we saw Terrence Ferguson and the success that he had, and he didn't set the world afire over here with his numbers, but he's still a first round draft pick. And I think he's doing pretty good job in the NBA, and he's getting quite a few minutes. So there's times where he's playing some pretty good basketball over there. But I think LaMelo Ball's another level to Terrence Ferguson, and I think there's going to be a lot of guys, a lot of high schools over in the USA that are really considering the NBL as an option now, and we'll see how RJ Hampton goes as well. I'm not sure we'll see him play much either. I think he's helped himself, probably not as much as LaMelo Ball with the numbers that he picks up, but you also got to remember RJ Hampton's a year younger almost than LaMelo Ball as well. He's pretty young, so it's I think it's a huge success, and I'm excited to see what guys they bring out next year as well.
There's a lot of factors to it. I think for the NBL overall, it's been a massive success, and I think moving forward, like you said, there's going to be a lot of high school players that decide now not to go to college and come to play in the NBL instead, and then hope to play in the NBA on the back of that. So I think it's a huge tick for the NBL as a whole, and I think for LaMelo Ball, it's been a huge tick. I think Deddy Lozada, you have to say it's been a huge tick for his development, and I imagine this time next year we'll see him playing meaningful NBA minutes. I think overall it's been a win for RJ Hampton as well. I think he's gone from somebody who was probably thought of as a top 20 pick, where I think now he'll certainly be a top 10 pick, potentially top 5. Terry Armstrong just has never given himself a chance for whatever reason, so I think we discount him. So I think from a player's point of view it's worked, and from the league's point of view it's worked, but the clubs that have actually brought the players in, has it helped them as a club, do you feel? Especially probably the Hawks and the Breakers. Has it helped them overall by having Ball and Hampton part of their group?
Well, that's up to debate. I mean, from a pure wins point of view, I think you're always going to struggle when your starting point guard is 17, 18 years old. That's just the reality. I mean, you could have LeBron James. I mean, maybe he's an exception to that, but outside of, a handful of the few elite players, and even LaMelo Ball, who's potentially going to be a top 1, 2, 3 pick, still, I think from a development point of view, I think when you're relying, especially at that point guard spot, I think you could probably get away with it at 2, 3 a little bit more, because you don't have a guy calling the plays and the ball in his hands all the time. But I think at that point guard spot, to me, that's a lot of responsibility to give a 17, 18-year-old when you're going up against guys like Damian Martin, Mitch Norton, and guys that just know how to play physical and get the job done. And you, let's also, Casper Ware, Kevin Lish, those guys they're almost NBA caliber players as well. So you're going up against some seasoned veterans that you're going to have to go against at that point guard spot. So I think that's a tough call, but, I think it's also the exposure to Illawarra Hawks. I know, their crowd numbers, I haven't seen the specific numbers, but I imagine their home crowd is better this year. I think they can surely improve, but, it's better than it has been in the past. So there's, from a pure wins point of view, and it probably hasn't helped, but I think that overall exposure and from the league's point of view, it's definitely been a bonus.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, let's move on. We've got 4 games to go for the rest of round 16 here, Shawn, and 2 of those on Saturday. We've got a doubleheader on Saturday. First up, Brisbane Bullets hosting the Illawarra Hawks. We've talked about the Hawks there. They're just playing for pride and really to blood their young players at this point. So hopefully we see a lot more of Emmett Nair and Sunday Desh and Angus Glover and company there, and hopefully they just get a chance to build for the future. But for the Brisbane Bullets, they need to win this game. They've been playing well lately. Lamar Patterson's been terrific. Will Magnay's coming from nowhere to be a really exciting player. Matty Hodgson's playing pretty well. They're building some momentum, the Bullets. This is a must-win game for them if they want to stay in the playoff mix, though.
Yeah, they've got to get this one, and I think Will Magnay at the 4 and Matty Hodgson at the 5 gives them a little bit of a different look. I think Will Magnay, from his defensive presence and the way he's able to block shots, is pretty impressive. He's definitely grown this year in his ability and confidence out there. So I'm excited to see his development. In the young guys from the Hawks, they're really grabbing this opportunity by the horns. They're playing hard. They're just, they're not able to close out games as well as probably you would hope, but I think that's just a learning experience. They'll be better for it. And, if you're the Hawks, you're using this as development, so you want in your club for the future, but they've got some exciting prospects, and you saw that with Sunday Detch and a few of the other guys being named into the Boomers lineup for the FIBA window coming up. So they've got some exciting things to play for, but the Brisbane Bullets, you got to expect them to get this one, and they got a lot riding. They still got a chance. I mean, they'll get this. They're 500, 11-11, and with a great opportunity to get in there if they can go on a run.
Now this next one's massive, and I'm willing to say the winner of of this game will probably, I'll say it, I think they'll end up making the playoffs. So that's how important I think this next game is. Cairns Taipans hosting the Adelaide 36ers. So little separating them right now. Cairns are third at 12 and 10. Adelaide are fifth at 11 and 11. So if Adelaide wins, they join the Taipans on 12 and 11, and then it's a real dogfight from there. But if the Taipans can win, go to 13 and 10, they're in a really good position. So I think the winner of this one will end up making the playoffs. I'm not sure if you're willing to say that or not, but what are you expecting from the game?
I think it's going to be hotly contested. I think the 36ers are hot and cold, but obviously they got a good win against the Wildcats, and they're going to be needing this one. And I wouldn't go to say, well, let's say if the Taipans win, yeah, I think they're in. And obviously if the 36ers lose, I think they're out. But if the 36ers win, I still think the Taipans have a great shot at getting in. And I say that because of the percentage as well. I mean, you look at the 36ers, their percentage is .98. So they've got to finish a game ahead of Taipans or United.
Well, almost 4 percentage points behind.
So it's going to be tough for them to get in percentage-wise. So they can't lose too many more. And that's the other thing is if they are winning and you're even winning big, you want to get as big a margin as you can. I mean, you're only playing 1 or 2 games a week. So, you don't want to look back at the end of the season and, hey, if I had, giving your development guys 2 or 3 minutes and all of a sudden they lose 8 points and you don't make it to the finals because of that. That's something as a coach, you've got to know going in that, hey, we've got to try and win it by as much as we can because it could come down to that, especially with how tight that spot for 3rd and 4th is.
Absolutely. Who are you tipping?
I've got the Taipans at that one at home, but I think the 36ers are going to make it tough for them.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. I think it's going to be a hell of a good game to watch. Then on Sunday, 2 more games on Sunday to close the round. The first one is another massive one. Spark Arena, New Zealand Breakers, who they probably can't afford to lose another game, so they need to keep winning. But so does Melbourne United. They're really struggling at the moment, Melbourne United. We expected them to be championship contenders, but right now, if they lose this game, they could very well be out of the top 4 by Sunday night. So massive game at Spark Arena. Tough one to tip too.
It is a tough one. I just think the importance of it, I think United are going to get that one. But I keep writing off the Breakers, and they find a way to win. I mean, they're playing 5 guys. They got 3 points from their bench, and that was from their import, Brandon Ashley, who plays 8 minutes. So and they beat the top team. It doesn't make sense to me, but they're finding a way to get a win. But second game of the round, I think United will get them. Obviously, Breakers having to travel back to Spark Arena as well. I think so much riding, and I just think United's talent has to come through at some point. Melo Trimble can't have that many bad games in a row. I expect him to explode and have a big one.
Then the round finishes. This is another important game because the Sydney Kings can't afford to drop 2 games in a weekend, but I would have thought if the South East Melbourne Phoenix lose this one in Sydney on Sunday, if they're not out of the playoff race already, then they will be if they lose again. So important game. Both teams coming off Friday night losses, but you'd have to say the Kings will bounce back, especially with Bogut back in the lineup.
Yeah, Bogut back at home. I can't see the Kings losing this one. It's the Phoenix obviously having to travel from Perth as well. It's going to be tough for them to back up. And, I think this road schedule, and, the Phoenix don't want to write off this season yet, but it's going to be great to see the character of this team towards the end of this year and see if they can build some momentum, I think, for going into next year. Obviously, they still got a chance, but I can't see them getting the Kings in this one. And if they lose that one, it's going to be tough to get into the finals. Yeah,
I think so too. Now that we'll wait and see how the next 2 days unfold, but a little bit of a change to the format this week. So I hope everybody enjoyed being able to hear us sort of give some immediate feedback on the Friday night games and then some last-minute previews for the rest of the round. So hopefully you all enjoyed that. Thanks to Hoop7, of course, for making it all happen. And check them out at hoop7.com.au, and also our other partners, Devlins. Check them out at devlinsonline.com.au. And for all of your sporting apparel needs, go to ID Athletic at idathletic.com as well. Really looking forward to seeing how the rest of the round pans out, Sean. We'll have a look back on it all next week as well. Hopefully, as it turns out, our tips are all the same this week. So you had a pretty good week last week. You went 6 of 6, and I had a couple of trip-ups. So you're back in front of me, and I've got no chance of catching up this week. So you're looking good in our tipping stakes. So we'll keep an eye on that. Plenty more to talk about next week. We'll fill you in on what Shawn's doing with Redhage Basketball on next week's show as well. He's got another exciting event coming up. But for now, Shawn, to close another episode of Hoop 7's Basketball Hustle, what can you leave us with?
Well, I'm glad you mentioned that 6 for 6. I was pretty happy with my picks. I think my picks went a little bit sleepy over that Christmas holiday, but a good thing I've got my sharpness back. I'm well rested, and I'm liking my picks for this week as well. So I'm excited to see how it all plays out. And you mentioned our sponsors, ID Athletic. They've taken care of me. I got some teams going over to play over in Bendigo this next week. Kitted them all out. And, Hoops Heaven as well. They've got the new PG4s are out. LeBron James got some new ones out. And I think the James Hardens as well. So if you need some new basketball shoes, basketball season coming up, go check them out. They've got all the latest gear. So that's where I get my shoes. And hopefully our listeners support our sponsors as well.
Bye, have a great time.